Hi guys, it's Shelly here. Welcome to my channel and thank you for joining me today. Today's video will be a full colour along in Enchanted Earth, the latest book by Melpomeni Chatzipanagiotou. I had put a poll up with, I think, a few options of pages, a couple from Nelkuneke's Story of Precious Cats and a couple from this book, Enchanted Earth. And the poll was heavily favourable for this particular page in Enchanted Earth, and that's the pumpkin page. This is only my second page in this book, so I'm really glad that you guys chose this page in the poll, and it just got me motivated and psyched up to colour in this book again, because I had no choice but to follow through now. I always enjoy colouring Melpomeni's work. Her art style is absolutely stunning, and I just feel that the way I colour or the colours I use tend to work really well with her dark art style. Now, I know a lot of people do struggle with the lots of black detailing on the pages, but for some reason it doesn't bother me. I actually really feel like my bright colours work well with it, and unlike a lot of pages that I do these days where I use paint pens to cover up black lines, I don't really find the need to do it in her pages. So even on this particular page at the end, you will see that I don't really do much paint pen work. Whereas in a lot of my pages these days, I do tend to like to put in a bit of highlights here and there with paint pens, cover up some black lines. But for some reason, even though there's loads of black lines everywhere in Melpomeni's work, I don't find the need to do it, and I absolutely love how my bright colours work with her dark line art. So for this particular page, I have used distress inks for the background, and then I've pretty much just used my Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer pencils. I've used them activated with water as well as dry, like I normally would, and then I also used Winsor & Newton gold ink for some sprinkling effect, and a little bit of paint pen, white paint pen, and very little glitter gel pens at the end to just finish off my page. I won't go into too much detail with the background because I've got a separate video, a how I colour video for this particular background, where I do explain in detail what I've done, how I've carried it out. So I'll try and remember to put the link in the description box below, so you can go ahead and just watch that video to help you out with the background if you are following along. And yeah, the rest of the pencil work will be a bit more in detail on this video. I will still show how I do the background, but I'll speed through it because I have that separate video available. So hope you don't mind about that. But I had some requests for this particular background because I've done, I think it's exactly the same colours I used for the backgrounds, but I did it about a year ago, again in autumn, in a Hannah Carlson book. I think it was Tales from the Forest Kingdom. And I was requested back then to share how I did the background, and I just hadn't got around to it. The pages I've been colouring and the colour schemes, and because of the seasons changing, and so I just never got around to doing it. Although this particular background can be used in different seasons as well. It's not totally autumnal. I think it just looks autumnal because of what the elements on the page are as well. So you can use it at any time, but I just didn't get around to doing it, and so I decided to finally do it for this page. I thought it would look wonderful with the other colours that I was going to use on the page, and it would look so bold and bright and vibrant, just like how I like my pages. And so yeah, I did a detailed video for the background. As always, I finished off the background first and then I worked on the foreground. With the background, I did go into detail of finishing it off completely with regards to the sprinkling effect, of the water splash effect, because of course I use my Albrecht Dürer pencils, which are watercolour pencils. So if I was to do the water splash effect at the end after all my pencil work, that would also affect the pencil work. So when I'm using my Albrecht Dürer pencils, or if you're using any other water-based media, it's better to do the water splash effect first before you use your pencils. So I finished off the background in pretty much full detail, other than for the ground bit, which I'll go in with pencils. And then I went ahead and started working on the foreground. Other than the background, I didn't really have a plan in mind for this particular page, but I think it worked really well because I had a little bit of the yellowy orange in the background. I knew that I was going to stick to my conventional colors for my pumpkin because it was just bringing in that yellow orange from the background into the foreground. So the first thing I colored was the pumpkin, and I just stuck to my yellow oranges, and I love how bright the pumpkin has turned out. And I think it's good that it's bright, so it pops off the page a little bit more. Otherwise it probably would get a bit it would probably disappear or get a bit lost with such a bold background. So I think the bright colors for the pumpkin works really well. Once I did the pumpkin, I knew, or the outer part of the pumpkin, I knew that basically I was going to stick to conventional colors for the rest of the elements. So the only decision to make was with regards to the leaves, because at first I thought I was going to do slightly more autumnal looking leaves, but then once I'd done the orange pumpkin, I thought that autumnal leaves of, sort of browny orangey leaves will make it look like there's too much orange, too much browns on this particular page. I needed something to pop a little bit more, and so I decided to go for greens and with hints of a little bit of yellow. I think I used green gold, but basically little hints of yellow in the leaves, just to show that the leaves are starting to change color. And I think it works with the weather right now here in England. Okay, suddenly in the last couple of days it's been raining and very windy. Basically, autumn is here. But previous to these 2 days, it's been really hot. Very unlike normal Octobers. So I thought that the leaves I was going to choose, which are still green, would work perfectly for me right now for this particular page. And I think I'm glad I did that because I think it pops out from the background. I think the browns or oranges or like burnt ochre colors that I normally use for autumnal leaves would sort of get lost with the background, especially because I had the yellowy orange in the background. So yeah, I'm really glad that I went for the green leaves because that was one thing I wasn't sure about what I was going to do. Once that was done, then I just started working on the other elements, and I think pretty much everything was then quite straightforward for me. So I'd done a base for the ground with Distress ink, with was it Shabby Shutters, if I remember correctly? And then I just went in with my pencils and darkened up some areas, creating the shadows under the elements that are on the ground, so like the pomegranate, the corn, the acorns, just to start making them look like they're 3D and popping off the ground, not just flat, not 2D. So I started putting in my shadows into the ground. Once I did the ground, I just started working on the elements, and this was quite a simple page because I decided, just so that I could get the colouring done, I've kept you guys long enough for this colour along because I kept getting distracted with other colouring and with Rita Berman's new book and things like that. And so I took a bit longer than I wanted with this particular colour along. So I decided to just stick to colours I already knew or I've already used for the particular elements on this page. Last autumn, I'd done a harvest page in Nell Conecho's Story of Precious Cats, and that particular page had acorns, it had wheat, it had grapes, I think, and maybe that's it. I can't really remember if there was anything else, but and pumpkins, of course. And so I've done a How I Colour video, an autumn series from last year, in case you do want to check it out. Again, I'll try and remember to put it in the description box below. And so I just used the colour combinations I used for those How I Colour videos for this particular page because I thought it would look it would work perfectly. So I didn't need to consider making new colour combinations. I liked the ones I had chosen. So for the corn and the wheat, I basically used the same colour combinations as I'd used in last year's autumn series. that made it nice, relaxed colouring for me because I didn't have to think up which other pencils to use, which colour combinations to make. And so it was really nice because I could just switch off my mind and just colour. I decided to work on all the elements that were outside the large pumpkin first because I wasn't sure how I was going to make the inside scene, the world inside the pumpkin, look. And so I just worked on those outer elements. I coloured the pomegranate next, and I was so happy with how the pink just popped and broke up all that green and orange and yellow. So that I really enjoyed doing that bit. And then I decided to work on the world inside the pumpkin. I needed to create depth inside this particular scene because I wanted to try and make sure that the perspective was right, that it looked like the house inside that pumpkin was in a distance. And it's sometimes hard to do that. It depends on how you shadow and highlight the elements. And so the first thing I thought was the background within the pumpkin is black, but I thought I'd go over the black and just deepen it up because that will just make it look even sort of deeper. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but I just wanted to darken up the black background. So I went over with the Sakura Micron pen and just covered over all those dots that were there as well, just to darken up the black. Then I started working with the elements within, and I tried to make it quite dark. So I tried to use really dark shadows, and I thought it started working. And I also attempted to make the river look like in the distance. I made it quite dark to make it look like it was far away from us. And so I think all of that sort of helped make the right perspective that I wanted, that the house, that the river is going deep into the pumpkin. Hopefully it translates through, but in my mind it has worked. So I was really happy with how that turned out. And then I decided to colour the house and start bringing in, I decided to do the roof of the house, basically the reds that I used in the pomegranates, the dark reds. So I brought that into the interior of the pumpkin. And then obviously I did the river blue, and I decided that the little bird that was outside the pumpkin was going to be blue, so that it sort of ties in the external elements and the internal elements. So yeah, I put in a little bit of blue for that bird also, so that it didn't just disappear amongst all the other colors that were there. So I think making it blue made sure that yes, we can spot the little bird that's there amongst all the large pumpkin, the large corn. It's such a tiny bird, isn't it, if it's smaller than the corn? So yeah, I think that worked really well as well. And then to help with the perspective, the leaves at the top of the pumpkin that to me look like they're outside the pumpkin, I had left that till the end because I wasn't sure how I was going to colour it. Again, I wasn't sure what colours I was going to use. I didn't want to use very bright colours for those particular leaves. So I didn't want to use the exact greens that I'd used for the larger leaves that are above the pumpkin. I wanted it to be a little bit different. I didn't want them to stand out too much. However, at the same time, I wanted to maintain the perspective of the world inside the pumpkin, being inside the pumpkin, like far inside. So I had to make the leaves a little bit lighter, not use too many dark shadows so that they look like they're in the foreground. So normally I would use really, really dark colors for my shadows, so that there's a big contrast between the shadow areas and the highlight areas. But for these particular leaves, I decided to keep it a little bit simpler, not to draw too much attention to them and not to make the shadows too dark. And I think it worked really well. And it does look like the leaves are in front of the scene, basically. And again, to just help again with the perspective, I thought that the pumpkins that were inside the small pumpkins that were inside the large pumpkin needed to be less bright than the main pumpkin. And so I used Naples yellow, I think, and I used like the burnt ochres and browns just to tone down the yellowness of them, the brightness of them, and still have them being yellow because there was so much green around, so I didn't want to make green pumpkins. So I decided to keep them yellow, but I toned down the brightness of the yellow I was using and the brightness of the oranges I was using, and therefore it didn't clash with the large main pumpkin. And then the last thing I coloured for my pencil work were the little, I think they're pumpkin seeds. I wasn't sure what they would be, but I did look up pumpkin seeds. It made sense. I'm like, they're not leaves, definitely the way they are distributed. And so I looked up pumpkin seeds, and a lot of pumpkin seeds were like ivory colour, slightly brownish, brighter greens. So I decided to just mix a little bit of green with, I think, brown ochre or raw umber and ivory, just so that it stands out a little bit from the other greens around it. It looks a little bit different, but yet it has hints of green in it. I didn't want them to be completely brown or ivory only. I wanted it to sort of blend in with the surroundings, yet stand out. So hopefully that worked. I hope I'm making sense. But this is how I think when I'm colouring, and you'll see that I leave certain elements on the page. So like when I was colouring the elements outside the pumpkin, I left these pumpkin seeds till the end because I wasn't sure how I was going to colour it. I left the bird till later because I wasn't sure what colour I was going to use yet. So sometimes I'm actually thinking about things as I'm colouring and seeing, okay, now what colour will look good for those particular elements that I wasn't 100% sure about. So yeah, when I'm colouring, I'm actually thinking about these things, and ideas pop into my mind, and then I do them on page. So yeah, I don't always plan my pages from start to end. But I'm really happy with the colours that I've chosen. I love how bold and bright this page is, because I've found it really hard for some reason to colour in this book. I absolutely love it. But I've been finding it a struggle to find the inspiration to tackle these pages. Maybe because I'm worried that I will mess up a page or not do it justice. And I think it was really good that I put the poll up on the community tab and you guys chose this page, because again, there is a chance that I would have delayed colouring in this book. But I'm absolutely so happy with the way this page has turned out. When I'm looking at it, it makes me smile. All those colours just make me smile, even though it's autumn. And I know autumn colours are meant to be, earthy tones, browns, dark tones or muted tones. But I've managed to sort of keep the autumnal feel and still bring in my bright colours. And I like that. Anyways, once the pencil work was done, I knew there wasn't much else I was going to do. As you see on the page, there are always some elements I leave, some small elements I leave uncoloured, because I sometimes just then come in with glitter gel pens and fill up those small elements. So that's what I did with the little, I think they're meant to be grapes. Actually, I don't know, because the vines are coming off the pumpkin, so I'm not sure if they're meant to be grapes. But at first I thought I was going to make them purple, but when I finished the page, I didn't think I wanted to introduce any more colours. So I decided to just go in with a gold glitter gel pen and fill up the grapes. And I think that's it. I didn't use much glitter gel pen. I then used a Posca white pen. I didn't use any other paint pens, just a Posca white pen, and went in and did all the dots that Melpomeni has already put in her illustration. So I just went over those with the white paint pen just to give a bit of a highlight and to bring back the dots that were in the sky inside the scene in the pumpkin. So I used the paint pens to bring back those, I'm assuming, stars, and again help with just giving a little bit of pop of highlight. And that was the page done. And I'm so happy I coloured it, and I'm so happy that I've shared it with you guys, because I love how it's turned out. Some of you did ask me on the how I colour video on the background whether the distress ink bled through the paper. Now, I don't know if you've seen the flip through of this book. I did put it up when the book came out. I'll try and remember to put in the description box below. But in the flip through, I did mention that even though the paper is nice, feels nice, it does feel thinner than Melpomeni's other two books. I'm not sure why. I had contacted her. She wasn't aware that was going to happen, but it's still good paper. Like, I've been absolutely fine colouring in it. But with the Distress ink, when I splashed it with the water, there are certain bits where the ink has gone through ever so slightly, but it has gone through, and the page has also crinkled ever so slightly, but it has, which normally doesn't happen when I'm using water on Distress ink. Yes, when I'm using my watercolor pencils and I use a lot of water, sometimes it does happen, but it doesn't usually happen with the water that I splash on Distress ink. So maybe I put too much, because I do remember going over and over it in the video. I remember splashing with water, dabbing it off, and then splashing straight away without the paper drying. And that's probably why it's a little bit wrinkled, and probably why a tiny bit of Distress ink has gone through. But it is a one-sided book, so it's not a big deal. And literally, it's maybe one little corner that has gone through. So that's why I'm thinking I may have put too much water in that particular area. So generally, I would say no, it doesn't bleed through. But yes, if you put too much water, it will bleed through. However, even though the paper is a little bit thinner, my pencils work beautifully on this paper. And as you'll see, I do activate the pencils with water and I do use them dry, and they worked wonderful. But that's the page done, guys. I hope that you like the end result. I am happy definitely with the end result. I'm so glad I did the background again, because I thought I wouldn't remember how to do it. But I thought the last time I did it, I really liked the colours and I loved how bold and vibrant they were. And so I'm glad I tried it again. So thank you for choosing this page, guys. I have had a blast colouring in it, and I'm so glad I finally got a second page done in this book. And it does make me motivated to colour in this book again soon, hopefully. So hopefully I get inspiration for another page. Yeah, at least I've done a second page in this book. I'll leave you guys now in peace to watch the rest of the colour along. If you do follow the colour along, as I always say, please share it with me, whether it's on Instagram, whether you email me. I love to see your versions, and it makes me so happy when I know someone has followed along or at least watched my video. So yeah, make sure you share it. I'm always happy to see your pages. I will be back with you guys again very soon, hopefully with another video. And until then, take care, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of the video. Bye-bye.